Hi, everyone. Well, that minute was a lot long, 5 seconds at the end of that, huh? Sorry about that. Welcome to this week's Thursday Conversations for Content Marketing World 2020. If you're watching this live or on our YouTube channel, every week we're doing this between now and the end of April, so our attendees can get back into the platform, watch some sessions, focus on a certain track. Every week we're doing a different track, just to make it a little more easier for you to get back into the sessions and not try to barrel through 100 presentations at one time. So thank you for being here. I'm really excited. So this week we're doing brand strategies, and we're talking with the speakers from that track. And I'm joined with three of the smartest people that I know in the business. I have Jessika Phillips from Now Marketing Group, Amber Naslund from LinkedIn, and Vishal Khanna from Health Price Technologies. Thank you all so much for being here and for barreling through our tech issues with us. So thank you.
Thank you.
So, yeah, one of those days.
Every day. So we don't have too much time, so I'm just going to dive right in. So Amber, let's start with you. I laugh at you being an expert in imposter syndrome. The irony of that is not lost on me. You're an expert at that. But I nodded through pretty much your entire presentation, so I am guilty of everything you said. But one of the things that I realized is that, I've known you since 2009 from Twitter, and I look at you as like an expert. And isn't it just fascinating that, all these things, you don't see that, but we all do, and I think part of that is digital overload, hyperconnectivity, comparing ourselves to others. And one thing I really latched onto in your presentation was this inventory of truth. As a person, I get it, but as a brand, how can brands really find an inventory of truth for themselves?
Oh, that's a great question. And it's actually, this is marketing, to me, it's marketing fundamentals. When you go into the world of trying to decide how you position yourself in the market, this is sort of like marketing 101. You have to know where you sit, what it is that you do well, where you don't play. Half of strategy and brand strategy is what you don't do as much as what you do. So for me, you can ask a lot of the same questions of your company brand or your organizational brand. What do we know? What are we good at? What do we know we're better at than maybe other people in our space or our industry? What makes us special? What makes us unique? I think those are all important questions to ask. And when you go through the exercise of brand positioning, they're kind of core to that process anyway. So to me, most of the time when I end up talking to marketers who've kind of lost their way a little bit with the branding side of things, it's because they've forgotten some of those fundamental truths. So having a really concise version of what your brand is and stands for, and having everybody have access to that in a way that they can keep anchoring their work to that, I think is critical, so that you don't lose track of who you are and who you're not.
Well, that's perfect frame going into Jessika, what she had to say with her care flywheel. A lot of these things just flowed so nicely together, and you're finding your niche and you're finding your voice. And the two things that I liked in the flywheel, all of it actually, but the capturing your attention and articulating your message. Can you share a story from one of your brands and how that you worked through those first two parts, Jessika?
Yeah, absolutely. And just echoing what Amber said, that is so true. So that's like trying to give you some silent snaps because it's so spot on. In order to capture attention, we really do have to start from the inside out. And there's no way truly to show up that's going to be memorable in a way that's going to kind of stop people in their tracks unless you do get to those, foundational truths. And yeah, there's several clients that we work with in order for them to be able to tell their story. And I share one example in the presentation and go through that full process that we went through with them. And it was a water bottle company. So think about this. They're a water bottle company. What's going to set them apart from someone else that sells water bottles? If you do a search online, you're going to be presented with a sea of samesies, if you will, and options there. So unless they got to not about what they do, but how they do it, how they show up, what they're really there to do and serve and who they're there to do it for, you really can't capture attention in a way that's memorable or articulate that it's different than price unless you do get to some of those foundational truths. So what we had to do with this company is break through that they're not there just to sell water bottles, that they're there to help people live an extraordinary life. And once that clicked, and once that came true and aligned with who they are at their core, then it wasn't just about selling a water bottle, it was about having this experience. So now it's easy for them to come up with content to present. It's easy for them to come up with their own tone that's going to align and resonate with the right audience. And it's easy for their audience to want to come back to them to get more of that thing that's going to be magnetic, the content that's really going to connect with them on a meaningful level of this sense of belonging, versus just the bullhorn kind of message that we're used to, kind of trying to think about marketing as just putting a message out there. It's so much more than that, but it does go back to exactly what Amber said, with the foundational truths first. You have to start from the inside out. So that's just one example. We in a 12-month period, we were able to increase their ROI by 331% just with small tweaks to something that they were doing, with just getting to the core. And in fact, in the case study that was presented in that presentation, they had lost 1,200 fans during this process. And it was because those people weren't the right audience. So when they got true to their message, the right people came back, they stuck longer, their pages did eventually grow, but they had to get rid of the noise that was weighing them down.
And I was thinking about that. Robert Rose always talks about just keep asking why. Why do they need a water bottle? Because they're going to go work out. Why are you going to go work out? Because I haven't left the house in 10 months. I mean, just like, or I want to go see my girlfriends. And, just that whole thing of like building that community around this commodity, of a product. And, that I just love that story from the water bottles in your presentation. So going from water bottles into much more complex topics with Vishal, you talked about articulating your message, and you talked about some heady topics that were like, you got into some heavy stuff. So, but you're also doing the same thing. You're taking these complex narratives and turning them into logical arguments and then content pillars. Are the content marketers always the best people that you work with to be doing that? Or are they looking within their organization to try to find those right folks?
That's a really good question. I'm going to answer it in two ways. First, no, we're the wrong people. We are in my opinion, we're the translators, right? Especially when you're talking about a complex industry, because that product which you sell, or that consumable, whatever you want to call it, is coming from a domain of expertise. What I am selling to you, in a way, is my expertise packaged in a technology or product or solution. So the first answer is no. You need to learn how to translate that expertise, which is in a lot of times pretty complex, into something rather simple. And once you get it to that simple avenue, then you really have the option of going complex again, if it is the audience that's complex as well. If you have a product and an audience that speak a unique language, you need to utilize that. Or something that's simple to understand and, as you were saying, a logical argument. So first, the answer is no, but second, the answer has to be yes. And why I say that is because you need to become the expert in what you're doing. Especially again with complex industries, by becoming the expert, by becoming the lead sort of content developer, you can shape the sort of perspective of your company in a way that you probably won't ever get any sort of freelance or outsourced party to be able to, because you become an expert in the same way that your product experts are. So both.
It's interesting because when I was at an ad agency 20-some years ago, one of my favorite clients produced centrifugal cylinders. Mm-hmm. And I could do a paid media buy on that, but I couldn't write a blog post about it. It's very different as marketers how much now we need to know about our products than we used to.
Yeah, and you need to know to the extent of what to say and what not to say. For example, if you're working within a highly regulated industry, you're probably not necessarily going to be talking about ROI, right? If you're selling a B2B solution, you're going to talk about some other thing that then leads to the ROI, because it's regulated, because people speak in coded language in a way. So what are those coded phrases and what do they mean? And how can you repeat them over and over again? It's a little boring, branding to some extent. It's pretty boring, especially with a small solution set, right? You're going to come up with 10, 20 phrases and you're going to repeat them year over year, way past your level of being interested in it.
For sure. Well, Amber, I'm totally switching gears. So one of the things that I was thinking about in your presentation was, I think your ultimate goal of talking about imposter syndrome is just to get everyone to stop having it. How do you make sure that, you're trying to basically put yourself out of business because you want no one to have it, so they're not going to need you? How do you keep evolving your message so you're taking people to the next step and the next step and keeping your content relevant?
I actually, I don't think that it's possible for people to just sort of not have it anymore. So I don't look at it as that being a problem. I actually look at it as my constant effort to help people reframe it, to make it something that they can build upon rather than something that sort of gets in their way. Because the biggest, I mean, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, I think actually imposter syndrome can be a good thing. And it's one thing, there's a difference between kind of self-awareness and humility and being stuck with constantly feeling that pressure of paralyzing self-doubt. So my goal is really just to kind of get people unstuck and to get them in a place where they can think of these things in new ways. This is part and parcel to the human condition. So I'm not worried about this conversation not needing to be had anytime soon. I'm also a parent, and I watched my daughter and kids her age wrestling with similar things in a very hyper-connected online world where they feel pressure, not just, you know, from their peers at school, but from peers across the internet. So I think that there's going to be need for lots of people to hear these same messages for a really long time. So I'm not worried about it being saturated. And, you know, sort of to that point about we get tired of it way sooner than anybody else.
Yeah.
It never, you know, I never have this conversation without at least somebody going, imposter syndrome, what's that? I've never heard of it before. This is new to me. So whether it's something I can do in my sleep or talk about, I'm still constantly learning. So there's always something more that I can share. And I think there's constantly new generations of people and professionals who need to hear this stuff. So I'm not worried about it getting stale because, man, if humans were that easy, we'd have all figured it out a long time ago.
Yeah. And the community that you built, you know, that are kind of just coming back to you for more information or more validation or just more, I just need a reminder that everyone's going through this in some capacity.
Yeah, I think the sense of like camaraderie and common experience, I think, is so critical. So it's not just me talking at people, it's me facilitating a dialogue amongst people who share these experiences. And we find a lot of comfort and security and validation in hearing that other people, that we're not alone in feeling this. So if nothing else, I can probably stop talking eventually and people can talk to each other, and that's equally valuable.
I actually said this Tuesday on our Twitter chat that there was one, it was a couple years ago, one week our guest was 15 minutes late and no one noticed because our community is so, so active when they were talking amongst each other. And I asked the question and people were jumping in. And then the person was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, you don't even need to say that because no one even realized you weren't there. I mean, a whole hour would have passed for sure. But it just, communities can run themselves if they're moderated and built the right way.
That's a good point.
So Jessika, coming to that, one of the things we talk about is that our community is so important to us. And ultimately, we want them to pay to come to Content Marketing World. We want them to pay to come to CONTENTTECH, to take an action with us and spend money with us. But every thing we do isn't focused on that. And we're lucky because we work for CMI, so we understand the whole content marketing process. But how do you take a brand like a water bottle company and let them know that it's going to take a minute to get to that? Everything we're doing can't be revenue driven specifically.
Yeah, and this works with any industry. So I use the water bottle company, the example, but just what Vishal was saying, and being the expert in what you do, right? And being passionate about it and knowing what to share, what not to share. It starts, again, kind of going through the care flywheel process that's shared in the presentation, starting with capturing attention, articulating your message, and then it goes to relationships focused and exceptional experiences. And the only way to do that is to truly focus on, okay, instead of just thinking sales minded all the time in the sales funnel, that you really have to think about everything that you're doing as a flywheel. So starting again from that inside out, but thinking, how can I focus first on turning my existing clients into my biggest advocates? So like what Amber was saying with building that community, that hub, and what you were sharing with like the community that you've built with, CMI and Content Marketing World, people that once we get it and they know that we're passionate about it and we are the leaders, they're going to want to continue to come back to us for that source of information. And the more that we're serving and giving, the more they're going to keep coming back, the more that they're going to then be our sales team for us. It's going to continue growing in momentum, but not just our clients. We also need to look at our followers, the people that are just following and connecting with us. Maybe they haven't even purchased anything from us yet, but they're part of this community. They will become true fans that are still going to share and maybe be your biggest cheerleader. That's also going to grow the momentum of your flywheel. your team members that are part of your company becoming your evangelists for you. So the ones that are willing to jump in because they're also passionate about it and they get excited about nerding out about that thing that you do. And they're going to add momentum to this flywheel. So it does take this, showing up with consistently with clarity and conviction in what you are sharing to grow this momentum, though, that it's going to keep growing over time. And that's the only way of building that sustainable long-term growth that does turn into sales. But even more importantly, it's going to reduce your churn. It's going to help you not have to pay all the time to get that attention. You're going to grow in earned attention. And it will then continue to grow in momentum outward when you continue doing and focusing that way on it.
Awesome. So Vishal, with communities, with complex industries, communities may not be as easy as some other places. How can communities, I'm thinking from your side of things, identifying customer needs, seeing a customer journey, like how can communities help you in what you're doing?
Let me think about that. That's difficult because I actually, community is probably the biggest challenge for us in building one and building it around what we do, because we're really a small player. And if anything, we're probably trying to attach to other communities instead of developing our own and be a company voice within larger sort of conversations. What I have found that has succeeded, though, is when you start to look at yourself as an individual, you've become an expert in your industry and you've become a thought leader in a way, is to then utilize that to build relationships with other sort of folks on the ancillary spaces around your industry that are speaking about it and are mutual thought leaders. If you don't have the kind of industry where there are these built-in, sharing communities, which in the case of life sciences is quite often the case. Everybody is very private in what they do, to the extent of, even at conferences, people turn their name tags around. So it's sort of antithetical to community in a way. And what you have to do is look around the outskirts of it. And all those other folks who are also challenged with having a conversation inside of that landscape are going to find their own places outside on the periphery.
Okay, I'm switching gears 100%. So one of the things Amber talked about was GTFO. Getting out of this world we're living in, just taking a break, deleting apps from your phone. I did that one time for 7 days, and I realized I picked up my phone probably 200 times in one day, looking through my apps, and they weren't there. I was like, put my phone back down. How do you, between all of your travels, this is for all of you, your travels, your speaking, everything, sitting on Twitter all day long, being in Slack channels, how do you take a break, and how do you just re-energize yourself? I'm going to start with Amber.
By force. so I am obviously like hyper connected. I work for LinkedIn, so I'm like I pretty much live online. So I really just it's a matter of actually creating the habit to be offline and scheduling actual blocks in my day to go run, to be with my kid. My daughter and I share a hobby in horses. So we have a horse that he needs tending to. So it forces me to go to the barn because I have to be there. And that's an incredibly analog world and experience. So it really is a matter of being deliberate about it. And I've taken long hiatuses online, and I found it just as difficult as you did to keep the phone away from me. But I try to make sure that I also think of it in terms of what I'm using the connectivity for. Because it's different to be, say, on FaceTime with my dad who lives in a different state versus, being on my phone and working and engaging my brain in that kind of way. So as long as I'm intentional about how I'm using that stuff, I think that's what matters most to me.
Vishal, how about you?
Oh, I'm a failure at it. So I don't even have hobbies. My hobby's like digital marketing. I'm so boring.
We got to get you a hobby.
Well, I just started paying attention to stocks, but only because people were trying to bring the billionaires down, and it looked like fun. So
right.
All your music. Come on, Vishal. I know your hobbies.
Oh, yeah.
You got to work on that.
Yeah, there you go.
Jessika, how about you?
No, kind of ditto what Amber was saying too. I actually just read this book, Atomic Habits, which I loved. And I realized things were about routine and getting into routine. But then also my goal for last year, 2020, then really put that into perspective was focusing on the ROI of your time. Like, where are we spending time, for what purpose? So it's not like that you're just cutting away digital, but it's how can I be very, very, very intentional with this block of time and build this into a routine to make sure that I really know exactly what I'm going in for. And I started just using a lot more audio messages and things like that would build the relationship a lot faster with individuals, and connect with them, let them know I'm still here and wanting to, get in touch with them, but not having to spend hours, just scrolling through and commenting and things like that. But I really found the best way, honestly, was 1, routine, but 2, listening to your body, and really just trying to get more in tune with pausing in the morning first for gratitude, and then taking some time to breathe and just feel into what you need, and just go off of that too on some days, because some days you may have a busy schedule, but your body's saying no. So you need to pause and take time for those things, and really that's the most important.
Hey, Jessika, will you hold that book up again for everyone?
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't trying to promote it. It's not like, but Atomic Habits. I don't know if anybody's read it, but I just read it, and I keep it now on my desk as a reminder to stick to my routine. So I have like Post-it notes all over here of like exactly what I'm going to be doing each day, like the non-negotiable times, of making sure that you have those breaks so you can stay in flow.
For sure. Well, in the spirit of routines, I told you I'd keep you at less than 30 minutes. So let's talk about how people can reach you. Let's just go in reverse order. Jessika, you want to start?
Sure. So you can do my personal website, jessikaphillips.com, and then all my social links are right there at the top. And
Jessika with a K.
happy to connect.
Don't forget that.
Jessika with a K, yes. Thank you.
I'm Cathy with a C, so I usually get the reverse.
Yeah.
Vishal?
Twitter's probably best, at @bediscontent, BEDISCONTENT. Look forward to talking to you.
And I guess for me, probably the easiest, I think I'd get fired if I didn't say LinkedIn, right? So I'm on LinkedIn. I'm very active on Twitter at, my handle's Amber Cadabra, which I can't ever say. I'm very sweary on Twitter, fair warning, if you're offended by that sort of thing. And my website is brasstackthinking.com if you want to find me there.
Well, I can't thank you all enough for taking a few minutes just to talk to our audience, and we loved your sessions. And I hope people, if you have not watched their sessions, please take a few minutes. They're all in this group, so if you have more questions, leave them a message, mention them. They'll respond to you. They're all awesome at responding. So we will see you next Thursday. We are talking about social media. Monina Wagner will be helping me next week. So thank you all, everyone, and we'll talk to you soon.
See you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.